So you're going to create a little program, and it's kind of a combination of these two examples from the notes. So this first example is illustrating how call by value works. So we've got a number, we pass it to the method. The method pulls in the number, changes it, and returns it. Okay. And then we illustrate the number after the change. And because we did not store the value, it's gone. Because call by value changes a copy of the number. So when we pass the number, it's not the actual value that gets passed, a copy is getting passed. So if we want to change it, we actually have to store it once it's returned. But we did not do that. And so what happens when we write it out is it's simply going to be the same value. Now, in this second call, okay, we are still sending it that same value, that number 10, but we are storing the number that is returned. So it's changed to a 20, and we are storing that number. And so in this write line, it's going to print out the number 20. Okay, so the key concept here in call by value is that a copy is sent instead of the actual value itself. Call by reference is completely different. With call by reference, if you pass the reference to a value, you are passing the actual memory address. So when it changes the real thing and not a copy. So if we call the method change me and we send it the reference to the number and we bring in that reference, when we change it to 20, the actual value is getting changed. Okay, and so when we print it out, it is going to reflect that change. So the program that you're going to write is basically going to be illustrating this. You're going to have a main method, and then you're going to have a method called change copy and a method called change ref. Okay, and so to start with, we create 3 integers, and then we're going to write those 3 integers to the console before we try to make any changes to them at all. And so I started kind of typing this up, but you can kind of see I've got N1, N2, N3. They're all integers, and I'm setting them to the respective values. Then I'm printing out original number 1, and I'm just going to kind of copy this. We'll paste that in, and then we'll print out the second and the third number. So at this point, I have not made any changes whatsoever. And so the numbers that are going to get printed out are going to be 10, 20, and 30. Okay. So my next task, pass the first number to the change copy method and store the returned value. So what it's asking us to do is very similar to what we did here. Okay. And we need to create a method almost identical to this. So in fact, I'm going to copy this. And we can paste that right below the main method. And so it wants us to call it change copy. And let's see. So what does change copy need to do? Down here are the directions. It receives an integer and it returns an integer. And it's going to change the number to 200. All right, so that kind of tells us what to do in this little method. All right, so it's returning an integer and it's receiving an integer. And we need to call it change copy. And it's going to change the number to 200 and it's going to return it. All right, so we've got the method written. And now we need to call the method. And then we have to write that to the console. All right, so I'm going to do integer. We'll just call it modified n1 equals change copy. And we're going to pass it n1. And then I'm going to write the modified value. And I'm kind of a lazy typist, so I'm just going to take, we'll take this one. Copy and paste. And we'll say the new number is modified n1. All right. So that takes care of that little task. Now it says pass the second number to change copy and do not store the returned value. All right, so we've got change copy. And so this is just like what we did here. Okay, we have the number, we passed it, and we did not return we did not save the number that was returned. Okay, so they want us to do kind of the same thing. So instead of creating a variable and assigning it what change copy returns, this time I'm going to call change copy and I'm going to pass it number 2, and I'm not going to store the result. Okay. And then I'm going to write out the value. So the new number 2 is, and we're just going to be writing out number 2 here. And actually, to make this simpler, instead of creating a new value, I could just say n1 equals change copy n1. And then I could print out n1. Okay. Either you can make a new variable or you can just store the result back in n1. Okay. The advantage of storing it back in n1 is when you copy and paste, you don't have to change as much. All right, so I've got the first one, got the second one. Let's look at the third one. So now we need a change ref method. So this is going to be a lot like this, where we pass a reference. So I'm going to copy this one. And this is going to go underneath. And we're calling it change ref. Okay, and let's see, what should this one do? Receives a reference to an integer and returns nothing. And we're going to change the number to 100. So it's not returning anything. And we're changing it to 100. Okay. And because we're passing a reference, when it makes the change, it's going to change the original number and not a copy. So we're going to call that method. And we don't need any kind of an assignment statement. Okay. And the reason is because, well, first of all, the data type being returned is void. And secondly, when we change a reference, it's changing the real thing. Okay, so we will just add ref in front of our variable so it knows to send that reference. And then we are going to go ahead and print out that modified value. All right, so that is pretty much the entire program. Okay, and you can see that the first one did change, and that is because we are storing the result and we're sending a copy. The second one where we sent the copy, we did not store the result. Okay, and so it's still 20. And the third one where we passed the reference, it did change.